We can be certain, David, that at the cabinet meeting, which will convene in about 2 hours, the issue of Ukraine will be mentioned, but it will probably not be top of the agenda, and it will probably be in such a way in which the Prime Minister is once again calling on all Israelis to try and get out of the country as fast as possible through land crossings. Israel is in a very delicate position. Like the entire Western world, Israel wants to support Ukraine against what many people here see as an unjustified incursion into Ukraine. But Israel, of course, needs Russia. Israel basically borders the Russian army on our northeastern border in Syria. Therefore, Israel is very, very careful. We saw that Israel did not jump on the train of condemnation, not the one that was presented at the Security Council, which Israel from outside did not support. Even the condemnation, the sort of condemnation that was presented by Foreign Minister Lapid on Thursday was very mild, simply because Israel has a lot of interest with Russia, and it puts Israel in a rather complex position. That is why even in the cabinet meeting, this issue will, of course, be mentioned, but in a very mild way. Later on in the day, in the afternoon, the Security Cabinet will be meeting to discuss how exactly Israel should be dealing with this very delicate situation in which Israel stands.
And along those lines, Ukraine had made a request here to the government for Prime Minister Bennett to mediate, even inviting the sides, Russia, Ukrainian leaders to Jerusalem. Do we know how the Prime Minister's office has looked at that proposal?
Look at that proposal, yes, and Israel, of course, will be happy to mediate. It would put Israel in a very central place in the most hot spot at the moment. President Zelensky of Ukraine will certainly be happy to come here, certainly happier than to go to Belarus, let's put it this way. From President Putin, we've not heard anything about it. I don't think we will hear about it. Putin is dealing with other issues. Mediation in Jerusalem, at the moment, I don't think this is something that President Putin is interested in.
And to mention to our viewers here, the images that they've been seeing on the screen are, again, live images coming from the Poland border with Ukraine. There are refugees still emerging as we speak here. People, you can see the makeshift setups here along the border here, laptops on top of stacks of water bottles trying to process people through. Speaking to the urgency and the ongoing developing situation there. Still with you, Jonathan, another interesting development. The Ukraine embassy in Israel asking for Israelis to join and fight, to come and fight here. This certainly outstanding outreach. How's that being looked at internally as well?
Yes, and let's remember there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis of Ukrainian descent. They're here. We saw the very large demonstrations, one on Thursday night, one on Saturday night in Tel Aviv, a protest which ended outside the Russian embassy. And those Ukrainian descendants, many of them current IDF soldiers or former IDF soldiers, they now feel they're obliged to go and fight. This is not something organized. This is clearly not something that Israel, the IDF, will go into, not something organized, but private people who feel that they need to go. Of course, they can come and do it. We know that Ukraine at the moment is fighting with every resource, including civilians. And if there are people, especially of Ukrainian descent here, with sort of experience in fighting, some of them we're already hearing, getting up on planes and going there as fast as possible.